All India Radio presents Morning News. Good morning. I'm Sunil Verma and with me is Saira Mujtaba. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to inaugurate 306-kilometer New Rewari-New Madar section of Western Dedicated Freight Corridor this morning. India and France to hold their annual strategic dialogue in New Delhi today. Centre decides to form a committee headed by Minister of State for Home G. Kishan Reddy to protect language, culture and land of Ladakh. Standing Committee of National Board of Wildlife approves advisory for human-wildlife conflict management. India calls for introspection within UN Security Council over lack of representation to African countries. Curfew imposed in Washington, D.C. after U.S. President Donald Trump supporters storm Capitol building. And rain stops play as third test cricket between India and Australia in Sydney. As the nation fights the COVID-19 pandemic, we begin with a message of precaution to stay safe and protected by following these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. And now the news. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will dedicate to the nation the 306-kilometer New Rewari-New Madar section of the Western Dedicated Freight Corridor today. He will also flag off the world's first double-stacked long-haul 1.5-kilometer long container train hauled by electric traction from New Ateli, New Kishangarh during the event. Governors and Chief Ministers of Rajasthan and Haryana, along with Railway Minister Piyush Goyal, will also be present on the occasion. The New Rewari-New Madar section of the Western Dedicated Freight Corridor is situated in Haryana and Rajasthan. It consists of 9 newly built dedicated freight corridor stations, which includes 3 junction stations in New Rewari, New Ateli and New Phulera. The opening of the stretch will benefit various industries in Rewari, Manesar, Narnaul, Phulera and Kishangarh areas of Rajasthan and Haryana, and will also enable better usage of the container depot of Concord at Kathuwas. This section will also ensure seamless connectivity with the western ports of Kandla, Pipavav, Mundra and the Hage situated in Gujarat. With the inauguration of this section, seamless connectivity between the western and eastern dedicated freight corridors will be achieved. The Prime Minister had on 29th of last month dedicated to the nation the 351-kilometer New Bhaupur, New Khurja section of the Eastern Freight Corridor.
माल गाड़ियों के लिए बनी इस प्रकार की विशेष सुविधाओं से एक तो भारत में यात्री ट्रेन की लेट लतीफी समस्या कम होगी। दूसरा ये कि इससे मालगाड़ी की स्पीड भी 3 गुना से ज्यादा हो जाएगी और मालगाड़ियां पहले से 2 गुना तक सामान की ढुलाई कर पाएगी। मालगाड़ियां जब समय पर पहुंचेगी तो हमारा लॉजिस्टिक नेटवर्क सस्ता होता जाएगा, जिसका हमारे निर्यात को लाभ होगा। यही नहीं, देश में उद्योग के लिए बेहतर माहौल बनेगा, ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस बढ़ेगी, निवेश के लिए भारत और आकर्षक बनेगा। देश में रोजगार के, स्वरोजगार के अनेक नए अवसर भी तैयार होंगे।
India and France will hold their annual strategic dialogue in New Delhi today. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval will lead the Indian delegation, while the French delegation will be led by Emmanuel Bon, diplomatic advisor to the French president. In a statement, External Affairs Ministry said the 2 sides will hold discussions on wide-ranging bilateral and global issues. Mr. Bon will also call on other Indian dignitaries. The last edition of the Strategic Dialogue was held in February last year in Paris.
The centre has decided to form a committee to protect the language, culture and land of Ladakh and ensuring citizens' participation in the Union Territory's development. The committee will be headed by the Minister of State for Home G. Kishan Reddy and will include elected representatives from Ladakh, Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council, central government and the Ladakh administration. The decision to form the committee came yesterday after Union Home Minister Amit Shah met a 10-member delegation from Ladakh that expressed its views about the need to protect Ladakh's unique cultural identity. The delegation also spoke about the geographic location and strategic importance of Ladakh, its demographic changes, and the need for generating more employment opportunities in the UT. While speaking to the delegation, Home Minister Amit Shah reiterated the Union government's commitment to preserving Ladakh, saying that under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership, Ladakh's land and culture will be protected and developed. Minister of State for Social Justice and Empowerment Ram Das Athawale has said that the NDA government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi has allocated 69,000 crore rupees for the post-matric scholarship of scheduled caste students for the next 5 years. Addressing a press conference in Ahmedabad, he said that 1 crore 30 lakh scheduled caste students will be enrolled for higher education and skill training under this scheme in the next 5 years.
Justice Hima Kohli will be sworn in as the Chief Justice of Telangana High Court this morning. Governor Dr. Tamilisai Sundararajan will be administering the oath of office at a ceremonial program to be held on the lawns of the Raj Bhavan in Hyderabad. Justice Hima Kohli has served as a judge of Delhi High Court and becomes the first woman Chief Justice of Telangana High Court. The present Chief Justice of Telangana High Court, R.S. Chauhan, has been appointed as Chief Justice of Jharkhand High Court. The centre has deployed multidisciplinary teams to avian influenza-affected Alappuzha and Kottayam districts in Kerala and Panchkula district in Haryana. The two multidisciplinary teams comprise of experts from National Centre for Disease Control, National Institute of Virology, PGI-MER Chandigarh, RML Hospital New Delhi and Lady Hardinge Medical College. A high-level team comprising Director NCDC and Joint Secretary and COVID-19 Nodal Officer, Ministry of Food Processing Industries, has been deployed to Kerala to oversee the implementation of avian influenza containment operations and guide state health departments in mounting appropriate public health interventions for the same. In addition, this high-level team will also review the COVID-19 situation in the state. The ministry said it is keeping a strict watch over the evolving scenario. A control room has been set up in New Delhi to keep watch on the situation and to take stock on a daily basis of preventive and control measures undertaken by state authorities regarding the flu. Speaking exclusively to All India Radio, Atul Chaturvedi, Secretary, Department of Animal Husbandry, said that there is no evidence to suggest that consumption of poultry or eggs fit for human consumption could transmit the bird flu virus.
ये जो बीमारी है इससे ना तो अंडा खाने में ना मुर्गी का मांस खाने में कोई रोक टोक है क्योंकि दोनों चीज कोई कच्चा नहीं खाता है और इसके द्वारा इन्फेक्शन नहीं फैलता है। तो हम लोग हर स्टेट को ये बताया है और हर स्टेट को ये भी रिक्वेस्ट किया है कि आप ही अपने माध्यमों के द्वारा इसकी पब्लिसिटी करें कि ये बर्ड फ्लू के कारण जो लोग हैं वो अंडा या मांस खाने के ऊपर में कोई रोक नहीं है अगर वो लोग खाना चाहते हैं तो।
Mr. Chaturvedi also said that the avian influenza infection in humans has not been reported in India as yet, though the disease is zoonotic. There is no direct evidence that viruses can be transmitted to humans via the consumption of contaminated poultry products.
मनुष्य में इस बीमारी फैलने की आज की तारीख में कोई भी रिपोर्ट नहीं है और मनुष्य में ये बीमारी फैलने की बहुत ही कम संभावना है जो कि खाली उन मनुष्यों में फैल सकती है जो कि डायरेक्टली इन बर्ड्स को जाके हैंडल करेंगे। उसके अलावा इस तरह से भयभीत होने का कोई कारण नहीं है। जो लोग इन्फेक्टेड एरिया के आसपास रहते हैं वो ये सावधानी बरतें कि अपने घर के आसपास अगर कोई फार्म वगैरह है पोल्ट्री की या डक्स की, अगर उसमें अनयूजुअल डेथ जानकारी मिलती है तो फौरन वहां के जो अधिकारी हैं वेटनरी डिपार्टमेंट के उनको रिपोर्ट करें जिससे कि उसकी टेस्ट और सैंपल लिए जा सकें और कंफर्मेशन अगर कोई जरूरत है या उसके बाद जो सावधानियां बरतनी है उसको लिया जा सके।
The Madhya Pradesh government has decided to ban the supply of poultry from Kerala and certain other southern states. Control rooms have been set up in every district to monitor the spread of the virus. More from our Bhopal correspondent.
The presence of H5N8 virus has been detected only in crows so far. Poultry remains unaffected in state till now. Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan has instructed that all efforts should be made for prevention of bird flu in chickens also, even though poultry remains unaffected by the disease. Necessary precautionary measures are being taken. The Animal Husbandry Department and allied departments are vigilant. Daily status of bird flu in the state is being conveyed to Government of India. District administration is closely monitoring reservoirs, poultry farms and poultry markets in the districts. Necessary information about prevention of bird flu is being given to poultry farmers and businessmen. On receiving information regarding sickness or unnatural death of crows or chickens, immediate samples are being collected. Infected places are being disinfected and sanitized. Pooja Pivardhan, AIR News, Bhopal.
Following the outbreak of bird flu in some states, Andhra Pradesh government has sounded an alert, asking the animal husbandry officials to keep a close watch on migratory birds and poultry for any symptoms of the disease. The forest authorities are keeping a close watch on migratory birds in all protected areas across the state where birds congregate in large numbers. A close observation is done at the bird sanctuaries. However, Dr. Amrendra Kumar, Director, Department of Animal Husbandry, clarified that there is no bird flu in Andhra Pradesh and people need not worry. Only a few states like Kerala, Rajasthan, Himachal Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh have bird flu cases, and so far no cases of bird flu have been reported anywhere in Andhra Pradesh.
The Standing Committee of National Board of Wildlife has approved the Advisory for Management of Human-Wildlife Conflict in the country. The advisory makes important prescriptions for the states and union territories for dealing with human-wildlife conflict situations and seeks expedited, interdepartmental, coordinated and effective actions. The advisory envisages empowering Gram Panchayats in dealing with the problematic wild animals as per the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, utilizing add-on coverage under the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana for crop compensation against crop damage due to human-wildlife conflict, and augmenting fodder and water sources within the forest areas are some key steps envisaged to reduce human-wildlife conflict. Payment of a portion of ex gratia as interim relief will be given within 24 hours of the incident to the victim or family. The advisory also envisages prescribing interdepartmental committees at local or state levels, adoption of early warning systems, creation of barriers, dedicated circle-wise control rooms with toll-free hotline numbers, which could be operated on 24/7 basis.
You are listening to the morning news on All India Radio. A reminder of the headlines before we move on. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to inaugurate 306-kilometer New Rewari-New Madar section of Western Dedicated Freight Corridor this morning. India and France to hold their annual strategic dialogue in New Delhi today. Centre decides to form a committee headed by Minister of State for Home G. Kishan Reddy to protect language, culture and land of Ladakh. Standing Committee of National Board of Wildlife approves advisory for human-wildlife conflict management. India calls for introspection within UN Security Council over lack of representation to African countries. Curfew imposed in Washington, D.C. after U.S. President Donald Trump supporters storm Capitol building. And rain stops play as a third Test cricket between India and Australia in Sydney. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on our Twitter handle at AIR News Alerts.
The country's COVID-19 recovery rate has increased to 96.36%. During the last 24 hours, a total of 21,314 COVID patients recovered. The Health Ministry said the total number of recoveries has gone up to 99,97,272. The actual caseload currently comprises only 2.19% of the total positive cases. Presently, the total number of active cases in the country is around 2,27,000. In the last 24 hours, 18,088 new cases were reported, taking the total number of positive cases in the country to over 1,03,74,000. The ministry said currently India's case fatality rate is at 1.45%, which is one of the lowest globally. In the same time period, 264 deaths were reported, taking the toll to 1,50,114. The COVID-19 cases in Gujarat are constantly declining. 90% of the 50,000 COVID beds in the state are now vacant. Principal Health Secretary Jayati Ravi has said that the recovery rate has reached up to 94.82%. More from our Ahmedabad correspondent.
Gujarat has recorded 665 new cases of COVID-19 during the last 24 hours. The total number of COVID-19 cases detected so far in Gujarat has reached up to 2,49,246. Out of this, 2,36,323 patients recovered. 897 patients recovered during the last 24 hours. More than 99,55,000 tests have been carried out in the state till date. Maximum 139 new cases reported from Ahmedabad, while Surat recorded 124 new cases. At present, total active cases in the state are 8,594, out of which 60 patients are on ventilator. 4 patients died yesterday due to COVID-19. Yogesh Pandya, AR News, Ahmedabad.
Odisha government has asked district collectors and municipal commissioners to identify session sites for COVID-19 vaccination. They've been asked to ensure that such sites have vaccination, observation and waiting rooms for the smooth administration of the vaccine to about 3.28 lakh healthcare workers. More from our Odisha correspondent.
Reviewing the COVID-19 situation in the state, Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik said that Odisha is fully prepared to implement the vaccination program, hoping it would be the biggest event of the year. However, he has also appealed to the people to be vigilant against the virus for another 2 months, particularly in view of the reopening of a host of sectors, including religious and educational institutions. In keeping with these, the State Health Department has decided to undertake regular health checkup in schools that are set to reopen from tomorrow and colleges and universities from Monday next. Meanwhile, the state has informed the center that there has not been any case of bird flu in the state so far. Yet, the state has intensified surveillance against any outbreak of the avian influenza during winter every year. Girish Chandra Das, AIR News, Bhubaneswar.
In Bihar, 2,49,520 patients have so far recovered from the COVID-19 infection. The number of active cases of COVID-19 is continuously declining. Currently, 4,156 patients are receiving treatment at various hospitals. In all, 424 patients have recovered in the last 24 hours, while 408 new COVID-19 cases were also reported. COVID-19 recovery rate has improved to 97.81% in Bihar. This is 1.45% more than the national average. Over 95,000 corona tests were carried out in the last 24 hours. Over 1,88 lakh corona tests have been conducted in the state so far. Health Minister Mangal Pandey said another dry run for COVID-19 vaccine will be conducted tomorrow in all districts of Bihar as per the centre's instructions. A record number of 1,21,05,121 persons have been tested for corona in Andhra Pradesh so far. 289 more positive cases have been reported in the last 24 hours.
In a massive countrywide exercise, another mock drill on COVID-19 vaccine administration will be conducted in all states and union territories tomorrow. The Health Ministry said this drive will ensure efficient planning and management for vaccine delivery in each district of all states and union territories. Each district will identify 3 types of session sites similar to the previous dry run, including a public health facility, private health facility and rural or urban outreach sites. The ministry said the central government is gearing up for the rollout of COVID-19 vaccine across the country. 2 COVID vaccines have been given emergency use authorization by the Drugs Controller General of India recently. To facilitate the entire vaccination process, a software, CoWIN, has been developed by the Health Ministry for real-time information of vaccine stocks, their storage temperature and individualized tracking of beneficiaries for COVID-19 vaccine. This software will assist the program managers across all levels in conduct of the vaccination sessions. A dedicated 24/7 call center has also been established for technical queries of CoWIN users. The cold chain infrastructure, along with sufficient supplies of syringes and other logistics, have been ensured to begin COVID-19 vaccination drive. In this regard, a meeting of Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan with the state and UT health ministers is scheduled today to guide them on the conduct of dry run. The entire planning of the vaccination drive, including beneficiary registration, micro-planning and vaccination at the planned session site, will be tested under the leadership of district collector and district magistrates. The dry run will also familiarize the state, district, block and hospital-level officers on all aspects of COVID-19 rollout. In Uttar Pradesh, the final dry run for COVID vaccination will be conducted on the 11th of this month. After the successful dry run on the 5th of this month, the next dry run will check the preparedness of the state government regarding the vaccination drive. More from our Lucknow correspondent.
Additional Chief Secretary Health Amit Mohan Prasad said that this drive will be conducted on 1,500 places across the state. That means, on an average, 20 places will be selected in a district for the final phase of dry run of COVID vaccination. He said that in the first phase, the vaccine will be given to the health workers in state. Meanwhile, Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has directed officials to complete all the preparations regarding the COVID vaccination timely. He said that data of the target group of first phase of dry run has been completed successfully and the data of target group of second phase should be uploaded within time. He said that in the state the vaccination drive will run according to the guidelines issued by Union Government. Sushil Chandra Tiwari, AIR News, Lucknow.
India has called for introspection within UN Security Council over the lack of representation to African countries among its permanent members. Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla said, even though more than half of the issues on the agenda of the Security Council are related to Africa, the African continent does not even have a single voice amongst the permanent membership to defend its own interests. He said the world body needs to correct this historical anomaly and collectively support the Izalvani consensus. Mr. Shringla was speaking at the UNSC during the open debate on challenges of maintaining peace and security in fragile contexts last night. Welcoming the evolution and rise of Africa as a key factor in contemporary world, he said the African Union has a leadership role to play in consolidating peace and post-conflict reconstruction in Africa.
African countries continue to face complex challenges. The principal driving factors are chronic political instability, weak governance structures, institutional weaknesses, ethnic divisions, and the presence of terrorists and armed groups. The bonds between India and Africa have been forged over several centuries. India welcomes the evolution and rise of Africa as a key factor in the contemporary world. We are committed to supporting African countries in this endeavor as per African priorities and without conditionality. India will continue to support Africa's aspirations and work towards empowering Africa for a future that is founded on the principles of inclusivity, sustainability, transparency, and socio-economic development with dignity and respect.
Curfew has been imposed in Washington, D.C. after U.S. President Donald Trump's supporters stormed the Capitol building last night. Curfew was imposed as protesters stormed the Capitol building when the House and Senate met to debate certifying President-elect Joe Biden as the winner of the presidential election. Mr. Trump has called on his violent protesters to go home but repeated his claims that the U.S. presidential election was stolen. Earlier, Democrats won 2 Senate seats in Georgia that tipped control of the Senate in their favor. The Democrats have won control of the Senate after Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff defeated Republican incumbents.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that he is distressed to see the news about rioting and violence in Washington, D.C. He said orderly and peaceful transfer of power must continue and the democratic process cannot be allowed to be subverted through unlawful protests. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman yesterday reviewed the progress of National Infrastructure Pipeline NIP implementation in New Delhi. The agenda of the meeting was to discuss the progress of NIP projects, expenditure incurred so far, and the initiatives taken to expedite the project implementation. This was the second review meeting by the Finance Minister with various ministries and departments to monitor and accelerate NIP project implementation. Despite the COVID pandemic, the NIP has managed to achieve substantial progress. The NIP was launched with 6,835 projects, which is now expanded to more than 7,300 projects.
The Republic Day parade this year on the 26th of January will be held following all necessary COVID-19 preventive protocols. The conduct of the parade will be similar to last year and special emphasis has been laid on factoring in social distancing in all activities. Our correspondent reports that this year the parade will culminate at the National Stadium in place of the Red Fort as earlier. And in sports now, rain at the Sydney Cricket Ground forced the players to go off the field in the 8th over of the third test between India and Australia. This happened after Mohammad Siraj dismissed David Warner for 5. Australia were 21 for 1 when rain stopped the play. Earlier, Tim Payne led Australia, won the toss and elected to bat first. Rohit Sharma is finally back on the Indian side and he replaces Mayank Agarwal in the opening slot. Umesh Yadav, who was ruled out of the test series after getting injured in the Boxing Day test, has been replaced by Navdeep Saini in the playing 11. This is the debut test for Navdeep Saini. The 4-match series is currently levelled at 1-1, and if India manages to win this test, this side will retain the Border Gavaskar Trophy even if Australia goes on to win the last test at Brisbane. Australia had won the first test while India was triumphant in the second test at the MCG.
In Himachal Pradesh, cold wave conditions have intensified following recent snowfall and rains. Several high reaches of the state received heavy snowfall, affecting normal life. Electricity and road connectivity has been severely affected due to heavy snowfall in tribal district Lahore, Spiti and Kinnaur. According to Met Department, Kalpa in Kinnaur district recorded 71 centimeters of snowfall during the last 24 hours, followed by Kelong 20 centimeters and Kufri 12 centimeters. And now let us take a look at the weather forecast for today. The national capital will have very dense fog. The city observed a minimum temperature of 10 degrees Celsius and a maximum of 18 degrees. Mumbai will experience partly cloudy skies. The temperature will hover between 22 and 31 degrees Celsius. Chennai will have a generally cloudy sky with light rain. The temperature will vary between 24 and 30 degrees Celsius. In Kolkata, mainly clear skies will prevail. The city observed a minimum temperature of 17 degrees Celsius and a maximum of 30 degrees. Srinagar to have partly cloudy sky, becoming generally cloudy towards afternoon or night. Temperature will hover between -1 degree Celsius and 7 degrees. In Jammu, there will be partly cloudy sky, becoming generally cloudy towards afternoon or nights. The minimum temperature was 11 degrees Celsius, while the maximum will be 21 degrees. Leh will have partly cloudy sky. The minimum temperature was -10 degrees Celsius, while the maximum will be -1 degree. Gilgit to experience partly cloudy sky, becoming generally cloudy towards afternoon or evening. The temperature will hover between -2 degrees Celsius to 8 degrees Celsius. Muzaffarabad will have partly cloudy sky, becoming generally cloudy towards afternoon or evening. The temperature will move between 4 to 11 degrees Celsius. Dehradun has observed a minimum temperature of 8 degrees Celsius and the maximum will be 20 degrees. The city had fog or mist in the morning and will have mainly clear sky later.
And now an overview of today's newspapers. Advisories issued after bird flu outbreak in 4 states, reports The Statesman. 12 bird flu epicenters in 5 states identified, writes The Pioneer. Cook eggs and meat fully, government advises people on bird flu headlines, The Asian Age. 75 million Indians above 60 suffer from chronic diseases, reads the top headline in the Times of India, quoting the largest study on the elderly longitudinal aging study in India. US President Donald Trump's supporters storming the US Capitol makes front page news in the Indian Express and Hindustan Times. The Indian Express notes the fallout of COVID in Kerala, which saw 8.4 lakh migrant workers back in the state from abroad, with 5.5 lakh having lost their jobs. And finally, using God's name to sell articles illegal, headlines The Hindu, quoting the Aurangabad bench of the Bombay High Court, which was hearing a petition on the matter.
And now, before we end the bulletin, the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to inaugurate 306-kilometer New Rewari-New Madar section of Western Dedicated Freight Corridor this morning. India and France to hold their annual strategic dialogue in New Delhi today. Centre decides to form a committee headed by Minister of State for Home G. Kishan Reddy to protect language, culture and land of Ladakh. Standing Committee of National Board of Wildlife approves advisory for human-wildlife conflict management. India calls for introspection within UN Security Council over lack of representation to African countries. Curfew imposed in Washington DC after US President Donald Trump supporters storm Capitol building. And rain stops play at third test cricket between India and Australia in Sydney. And with that, we end the morning news. Have a nice day.